Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. We are going to be going right back into things, getting down into the nitty gritty thick of it all by looking back into the witch's spell list. Now, last time we covered zero level spells, but this time around we are going to be taking a look at the first level spells. Now, first level spells, we don't get a whole lot of amazing stuff, but you know what? There's still plenty here that is really useful for you. And I wanted to take, like always, take the time to separate out what is mechanically in combat going to be the most effective option for you, and then cover a little bit of what's going to be a bit more on the flavor side of things. Now, like I said, this has taken me a fair bit of time to research, read through, form my own opinion on, as well as take a look at the mathematical breakdowns of a lot of the different spells. And for the most part, I tend to agree with a good number of the choices that are common throughout several guides that you can find online. But there's a few points where I do disagree, and I will break down why here. But I could probably ramble on about my reasoning and thought processes for a little too long, so let's go ahead and just get into this now. Starting us off for the first level spells, we have Mage Armor. This is going to be your bread and butter for a long time, probably carrying on for several levels. What this does is it's going to boost your armor class with a force effect, which will make it effective against incorporeal attacks from Ghost, for example, and it affects touch attacks and your flat footed armor class. Not too shabby to have there. It's incredibly useful to have, especially since witches are such squishy characters and do not get, well, really anything in the way of armor that they can wear. After that, we have Unprepared Combatant. It's a will save to resist, and what it does once it takes effect is it gives a -4 penalty to initiatives and reflex saves. And it lasts 1 minute a level, so at level 1, you throw this down on somebody for 60 rounds after you cast the spell. They're taking that -4 penalty to initiative and to their reflex saves. I mean, unless it's a rogue with topped out dexterity at, like, say, an 18, they're going to be taking a penalty to their reflex saves. I believe the minimum it can go down to is 1, but or maybe it's 0, but either way, however low you get it down to, that's a huge penalty to be taking, not to mention affecting the initiatives and the turn order. Really great to have. Now, a lot of guides put this right around green. I think it's potentially a blue, but that's just because it's a good combo spell. It works really well with the witch's various hexes that are already applying penalties to characters, forcing them to reroll, giving them penalties to their saves, any number of different combinations that you can come up with here will work so nicely. And then we have, after that, we go to Mount. Now, I consider downgrading Mount a little bit, but you know what? It is useful, especially early game when, unless you're stealing horses, you're probably not going to be able to afford to buy a horse right off the bat. And this will summon up a light horse or a pony that will last up to 2 hours a level. And this is especially useful if you have a wagon that you can hitch the animal up to, pull the entire party or most of the party if one or two characters already start off with the mount. Again, really handy to have a lot of utility here. And then after that, we get Obscuring Mist. Creates a 20-foot radius by 20 feet high cloud of mist, and that the mist will obscure dark vision, and it provides concealment. If you're 5 feet away, it's I believe it's 20% concealed, and as you get further and further, the amount of concealment that you get is just goes up to about, I believe, total concealment, which absolutely incredible bonus to have there. It makes it really difficult for people to shoot in after you. Makes a great getaway type of spell, or even one for ambushing people, depending on whatever situation may come out at hand for you. And then we go on and we have Enlarge Person. Now, Enlarge Person has some drawbacks to it. The target size is going to increase, so small to medium, medium to large, etc. They'll get a +2 bonus to their strength score, but they take a -2 penalty to their dex and a -1 penalty to their attack and their armor class. Now, that penalty to attack is offset by that +2 bonus to strength there. Their strength score is going to go, or their modifier is going to go up by 1 point, and so attack and damage will go up. But the AC goes down, and it's compounded by the fact that the dexterity modifier is going down as well. The really handy thing, though, is when the medium creature becomes large, they get a 10-foot reach. So if you have a friend with a polearm, you make them large size. They have that 10-foot reach. Or they have that reach already with the polearm. Well, their reach just got even better. And if they have multiple attacks of opportunity, fantastic. Not only that, it's going to be much harder for opponents to get by them. All around, a really, really handy spell to have for buffing allies in combat. Then we have Ear Piercing Scream. Now, this one is limited in that you can only affect one target with this at a time, but it only affects that target, so you don't have to worry about your allies being affected by this either. It deals 1d6 points of damage for every 2 caster levels up to a total of 5d6 by the time you hit level 10, and it will leave the target dazed. They can make a fortitude save to negate the dazed effect, and it halves the damage, but you know what? A damage dealing spell that poses no threat to your allies, has a status effect, and deals 5d6 points of damage, and it's sonic damage, which not a lot of creatures have resistance to. Absolutely great to have this spell in your back pocket. Now we come to Charm Person. Charm Person I actually really, really like. It's a will save to negate in a lot of humanoid creatures, which this is what it will specifically affect is humanoids. A lot of humanoids tend to not have great will saves. Just want to be careful with your elves and half-elves who have bonuses against these types of charm spells and the like. But when this does take effect, the target will see you as a friend and interpret everything you say with the best favorable outlook on it possible. Suicidal orders, threatening the target, damaging the target will break the enchantment, and it lasts 1 hour a level. Really, really great to create a scenario where you can just bypass certain difficulties. There's a guard blocking the way into the jail. You can absolutely use the spell on him, make it much easier to talk your way in. I saw a couple of guides talking about this as a way to bypass any role playing. Honestly, I think this is just an opportunity for more role play, and it's an out of combat utility that your character will now have. So you're effective both in and out of combat. Really, really good one to have handy. Then we come up to the Ray of Enfeeblement and Ray of Sickening. Now, these spells I actually really like. Maybe not so much with other characters, but with the Witch especially. These are another set of great combo spells. Enfeeble will drain the target's strength by 1d6 plus 1 points, and then Sickening Ray will give a -2 to attack, armor class saves, skill checks, the whole works right there. But with hex combos like Evil Eye or Misfortune, you're more likely to make these stick, and it's going to be fantastic when it happens. Draining 2 points of strength ain't great, but when you consider what the average is on a d6, it's about 3 to 4. So taking off 4 to 5 points of strength bonus or strength score from a character, from a target, is going to be really, really devastating, going to affect them greatly, especially at these lower levels. So, and again, you're not likely to be going up against a lot of high-end, high-powered opponents with crazy high stats and bonuses from so many other sources. So this is going to be really handy up to, maybe about the mid-ish levels, and at that point you may see the effect kind of drop off a bit. But Sickening is always going to be useful just because it'll affect a range of different things. And again, since you're comboing this with other debuffs like misfortune and forcing your target to have to re-roll basically everything, this is going to be really, really effective. Incredibly effective to have on board there. Now, after those, we come down to Summon Monster 1. Now, I actually really like summoning. I am absolutely on board with Treant Monk with his breakdown on the summoning spells. But yeah, this first one does not give a whole lot in the way of great choices that are going to be very viable in combat, at least not long term. But in spite of all of that, it's still an allied friendly creature that you can summon and place wherever you need to inside of its range. So you can set up flanking bonuses, help the rogue get out more sneak attack damage, help the fighter land a few more attacks, and you know what? If the target creature proves to be bothersome enough, you may even get a couple of those NPCs to take a swing at the summoned critter rather than one of the players. And every attack that goes towards this summoned creature is a win. It's an attack that did not go directed to your allies. So again, it's not it's not terrible by any stretch, but it's not the greatest option either. Now then we have Burning Hands. Now this one's a bit harder to justify, but it's always held a special place in my heart, and it's got some uses. You can deal up to 5d4 points of damage in a 20-foot cone, so not a lot of damage, and fire resistance tends to get really common as you go up in levels. But the area of effect is nice, and not only that, but you can use this to start some big fires real quick. There's a number of different uses you can get out of it. You just got to be a bit creative. One of my favorite go-tos is burning up the rigging on ships. You know what? Always useful. Fires out at sea, terrible thing to have happen. Or if you need to make sure you don't face any really speedy pursuers if you're fleeing a harbor, burning some of the catching a few of the ships on fire, or at least burning up the rigging and sails beforehand, will go a long ways towards aiding and abetting your escape. Now, we come to Cure Light Wounds. There's one of the guides I had read actually made this a blue spell, but this is a terrible spell for you to take. Absolutely. You touch a target to heal 1d8 plus 1 points of damage. That plus 1 is per level, so once you hit level 5, it tops out at a max of plus 5 there. But you see the problem there? You have to touch the target. You are a squishy. You are an unarmored spellcaster with low hit points. You do not want to be in combat. You don't want to be near it at all. Your role in combat is to be back behind the line, nice, safe, and sound, throwing out buffs, debuffs, and doing a little bit of battlefield control and hexing the crap out of everybody that you can. Getting in there and healing is not what you want to do in the middle of combat. It's better for you to heal outside of combat, and for that, this spell is probably one of the best, most bang for your buck. But you want it as a wand. This is incredible as a wand. Don't put this in your spell slots unless it's an absolutely dire thing where you need to have that extra healing going. This is definitely one of those last resort sort of spells in my book. So any of these other, even Burning Hands, will be a better choice for you, because then at least that way if you need to get something off your back or somehow contribute more damage to combat, you have something. And the reason for that is, the reason why I say Cure Light Wounds is a terrible choice, and it's something Treant Monk and a number of others have stated before in their own various guides that they have out there on the different message boards, and it's that it doesn't matter if the creature has 100 hit points or 1 hit point. Under the rules in Dungeons and Dragons, unless you're house ruling it, a creature with 1 hit point is just as dangerous when it had 100 hit points. So Cure Light Wounds, not the best choice. And then last but not least, we have Decomposed Corpse. Now, what this does mechanically is you target one corpse that's huge or smaller, or one corporeal undead, so zombies, ghouls, vampires. For the For the corpse, when you cast the spell, it leaves behind a pristine, clean skeleton. For the corporeal undead, they take a -2 penalty to their armor class and to their combat maneuver defense for 1 minute. So again, up to 60 rounds there. Combat wise, this isn't huge. I mean, why you would use this spell on certain undead like zombies or ghouls, I could see maybe ghouls, but throwing down more penalties on zombies, I don't know. And then decomposing the corpses, again, in combat, don't know why you'd want to do that. But outside of combat, after combat is finished, say you kill a fairly powerful humanoidish opponent. Doesn't even have to be humanoidish, really. But a lot of the healing spells require the body to be brought back or something to be brought, like true, they need something to be brought back in order for them to work. So decomposing the corpse and then, maybe pummeling or powdering the skeleton starts limiting their options pretty damn quickly. It gets to the point where you start needing true resurrection spells in order to bring somebody back after you've done that much damage to the body. And true resurrection spells are not easy to come by. Now, granted, the DM can just say, "Oh, well, they're connected. They know people with the resources and the ability to command that kind of power." But while that may be true, they if the DM's any kind of reasonable about it and applying any kind of chain of logic, that magic is still rare. That comes from pretty powerful people who want to keep their resources kind of close to the vest, and they want to keep a hold of everything. And even then, it's sort of that sort of a thing takes a bit of time. The spell casting in and of itself, is relatively short, but putting it all together and getting that arranged, and not only that, but with true resurrection, if if a deity wants to fight and keep that soul wherever it is it's departed to in the afterlife, they can potentially do so. But point being, a higher level magic like that is rarer, and since it's rarer, it's harder to come by, harder to get a hold of, harder to make use of. So this is a good way of making sure a particularly horrific, terrible, brutal opponent stays down and stays down for a good long while. Now, doesn't mean that they'll never ever come back, but it's handy knowing that if they do, it's going to be sometime down the line, giving you and your friends more time to build up their resources. Now, this overall was just a smidgen, a portion, a selection of different spells from the witch's first level spell list. Ultimately, anything that requires you to get in close to combat in order for it to work, like icicle dagger or shadow weapon, anything where you're engaging in melee, is a bad choice for you. Again, because you're squishy, have low armor class, and have low hit points. You are not going to survive long. Those spells are last ditch, oh shit weapons. So that's the, if it's down to you needing to stab somebody with a dagger made out of ice, things have gone totally sideways, and you're probably going to die anyways. But everything else here, mechanically at least, it are some of the more effective spells to choose from. Really, really, really handy to have. Kind of the point where on some of these where you're absolutely shooting yourself in the foot if you don't get it. Like, even if it's just roleplay purposes, most spellcasters are going to have the sense to pick up something like mage armor just because, hey, once in a while, the enemies wise up and they start trying to geek the mage pretty quickly. So having armor up is going to help keep you alive a little bit longer. And hell, it's also a spell that's not only great for you, but say there's a monk in the party, mage armor is absolutely wonderful for monks because they are combat oriented, but they don't get to have armor. This is a good way to give them a nice solid +4 bonus that applies to all the different types of armor class, from the regular to the flat footed to the touch armor class. So, really, really, really good stuff to have on board there. Now, with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. I hope you enjoyed today's content, and if you did, please go down there, hit like, talk to me a bit, throw down a comment letting me know what you liked, what you didn't like. Hell, if you didn't like the video, please leave a dislike as well too, and give me that feedback so that I can improve things here and help keep you folks entertained and informed down here at the Gamers Den. And if you've been enjoying the content here enough, why not consider subscribing as well? Because, like I said, always use more people around here. But once again, I've been your host. You folks have yourselves a good night.